Everyone wants more freedom in life. Freedom to do the things they want to do, and freedom from doing the things we don't want to do, and the freedom to make more money and enjoy life more. Yet most law firm owner operators do not have those freedoms. Not to the extent that you guys want. How do I know? Had hundreds or maybe thousands of conversations that touched on this subject. In this podcast episode, I got to interview Allison Johs of Legal Ease Consulting, who talked about her journey from becoming a young attorney to being one of the youngest partners at her law firm in her early 30s, to how she got burnt out and later found a new career in helping law firm owners avoid the burnout, developing more freedom from doing the things they don't want to do, developing the freedom of generating more money and enjoying life more. Listen to this episode, hear her journey, the story, how she did it, and how she helps her clients, and see if you can see yourself in one of these scenarios and perhaps find a solution in the tactics that she shares that will help you enjoy more freedom in your life.
Hi there. I have a small but really meaningful favor to ask you. I watch at the stats on our YouTube channel and Spotify channel, wherever most people listen and watch our podcast, and I see that over 80% of everybody who listens to it regularly is not a subscriber. I'm asking you to subscribe to this channel, and the reason for that is my mission and the mission of my team is to help as many small law firm owners to learn how to transform their law firms into better businesses, and so they in turn enjoy better lives. When you hit subscribe button, you tell these platforms that this is content worth listening, worth viewing, and they in turn will show it to many other small law firm owners and hopefully help me fulfill our mission of helping them create a better business and enjoy better lives. So would you please do me this favor? It would mean the world to me, and hit the subscribe button. And my promise to you is that I will continue to work hard at creating good content with practical ideas that help you and your teams grow better law firms. Thank you.
Welcome to Grow Law Podcast. I have an amazing guest with me here today, Allison Johs of Legal Ease Consulting. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. Allison, your career journey is quite interesting. You started off as a practicing attorney, made a partner, and then things kind of went off the rails. Share your story.
Sure. So I was a partner in a law firm that had been seeing sort of exponential growth from the time that I started there until the time that I left the firm. And I was there about 8 years. And in that time, we went from, I think I was the 15th lawyer hired in the firm, and there were about 6 hired within about the year before me. And when I left, I think we were up to about 55 lawyers. So in that 8 years, it was pretty substantial growth. And I had taken on a lot of sort of administrative and managerial roles in the firm, and then became a partner. I was sort of assisting the managing partner. They called me the administrative partner. And I did a lot of work on how we were running the firm and how we could make things run more efficiently, and also working on marketing. This was way back in the early 2000s, and we started with a website, which not a lot of lawyers had at the time. But I just became really burnt out and overwhelmed, and I wasn't sure what I wanted my next step to be. So I didn't think it was fair at the time to say I was just going on vacation, or to ask for an extended sort of period of time off, because I wasn't sure I wanted to come back. I wasn't sure I really wanted to even practice law anymore. So I left the firm. I gave myself a couple of months to just kind of think about things. Before that, I hadn't taken a vacation in quite some time, so I was just completely burnt out. And I decided that I wanted to try to make a business out of the pieces that I really enjoyed, or was enjoying the most, before I left my firm. And so part of that was marketing and business development. And part of it was the practice management side of things, developing people, making sure they were in the right roles, learning how to, or showing other people how to work more efficiently and to run their practices more efficiently. So I started a consulting practice, Legalese Consulting, and the name of my website, which I built at the time, was called Lawyer Meltdown, which came out of my own experience. But I actually, before I even started the website, I started a blog and I started writing. And so that was really how I started building up my client base, was through the blog and through writing and networking.
So very interesting. So you made a partner in a rapidly growing law firm when you were still a very, very young attorney. How'd you do that?
Well, I wasn't a named partner in the firm. I was a junior partner in the firm. I wasn't there long enough to be a named partner. But a lot of it was because of the partner. Yes, but a lot of that was because of the administrative and the managerial roles that I had taken on. I had lawyers working under me. I was assigning cases. I was working closely with our clients and really helping to build the firm on the marketing side. So I was taking a lot of those roles that would often be done by partners in the firm. And I think that they saw me, and at the time I saw myself too, as one of the people to take over the firm and to become a named partner into the future. But then, as you said, it kind of went off the rails.
So this is like your late 20s, early.
I was, in my early 30s.
This is a remarkable track for someone who was like that young at the time. Do you think that some of that meltdown came as a result of you just taking on so much?
Yeah, I think that was a lot of it. I mean, like I said, I hadn't taken a vacation. I was working, late hours during the week, and then on weekends I was home working on bills for the firm, which took hours and hours. And I had some things going on in my personal life too, and I basically just blew up everything all at once and sort of hit the reset button to try to figure out what I wanted my future to be. It just wasn't sustainable.
How did it feel to hit that reset button?
It's always great to have a reset button. It's not so great to blow up everything at once to do it, but I was lucky in that I had some savings, and so I had a cushion. I could, even though it was taking a huge leap into the unknown, I could leave without having another job lined up, because I knew that I had money that could carry me for a little bit. And I knew that I could always get another job, in the industry. And I probably could have gone back to my firm if that was what I had wanted to do. But I decided that the practicing piece, at least for what I was doing, and the firm I was in, most of what I did was insurance defense work. And it just wasn't fulfilling really for me, settling cases for insurance companies. It just wasn't doing much for me personally either. So I decided the piece that I liked was when I was working with other people, trying to help other people. So that was what I decided to try to make a business out of.
Did you imagine your life would be like as a lawyer before you actually became one?
I don't know. I can tell you that I knew that I didn't want to be a lawyer that was working. I went to law school in New York City, and a lot of people that I knew that I graduated with were going to work for big firms in the city, and people who were a couple of years ahead of me, and they were working constantly, and they were, 11 o'clock at night taking a cab home, and then, getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning to go back to work. I knew that was not what I wanted to do. I had a conversation with one of my law school professors and she basically said, well, but that's what it is. When you graduate from law school, you go to work for a big firm, and that's how you get your experience. And if, one day you wake up, or you don't even wake up because you haven't been to sleep yet, you're in your office and you see the sun coming up, and, and you've been in the office since the day before. And I said to myself, well, I know that's not what I want. I never want to do that. And so I didn't go to work for a big firm in the city. I came back out to Long Island, where I grew up, and got a job with a firm on Long Island before I ended up at the firm where I became a partner. So I always knew that's what I didn't want. I wanted to have an intellectual challenge. I wanted to help people with what I could do, but I always knew that I wanted to have a life outside of just work. So that was part of why I said, let me just stop this right here, because I didn't feel like I had that life outside of work that I wanted to have.
So how quickly after, as you put it, you blew everything up, how quickly did you find this business? And you said you started with blogging, right?
I started With the blog. Yeah, I started blogging. So I left my firm in May, and I think I officially incorporated Legalese in September. So I did a little bit
4
of
months.
other legal work. You know, when I started the practice, then I had some people that I knew from practicing law who asked me for some help, and I did do some legal work kind of on the side, per diem stuff and motions, and then there was a firm that I did work for part-time while I was building up my practice.
Very interesting. In 2009, I sold my first company, my 50% of the first company I built to my former partner, and I took some time off. I didn't blow everything up. Like this was a very conscious journey toward that exit, and it took me exactly 4 months to start going crazy. Like I needed to do something. I was 31, and I was just like, "Whoa, what am I doing with my life? I'm just sitting at home." This was, and obviously all of my friends were working, and so there's a little bit of similarity. So you start Legalese, and this is September of 2005. The Great Recession is ahead of you. You don't know if that is going to happen, but it's going to happen, and legal field would get beat up severely in the preceding years after the start of Great Recession. So you started with the goal of accomplishing exactly what for the attorneys that you would start working for.
Well, I made my tagline creating productive, profitable, and enjoyable law practices, and that was my goal, was for the lawyers that I worked with to feel like they were accomplishing something, to feel like they were making enough money to sustain themselves and their family, which as the Great Recession came a couple of years later, became a very important piece. You know, a lot of the lawyers that I worked with during that period of time were really struggling to figure out how they were going to sustain themselves, especially the solos and the small firm lawyers. But I also wanted it to be enjoyable. My experience, and I loved the firm that I was at, and I loved the people that I worked with and the lawyers that I worked with in court. All of the things that I was doing, it wasn't sustaining me. And so my goal was to make sure that the lawyers that I worked with were being fulfilled also, you know, personally and professionally in what they were doing. And that meltdown sort of experience, I wanted to try to avoid for other lawyers. I mean, lawyers are notoriously, high on the list of people with alcoholism and depression and all sorts of things. And I wanted to see if there was something that I could do to help the lawyers that I worked with to avoid that, to get back to the reasons why they wanted to practice law, and, you know, the populations that they wanted to help with their law degree and with their knowledge and their expertise.
So what were the common problems that you found that other attorneys, just like you, were having that you wanted to help them solve? That would lead to that fulfillment. That would lead to that better life as an attorney.
So, you know, my consulting practice kind of has two tracks. One is the productivity practice management track, and the other is the marketing track. And they work together. You can't really have one working well without the other. But people would come to me recognizing maybe more of one side than the other. And eventually with a lot of my clients, we would at least touch on both sides. A lot of the lawyers that I was working with in the beginning, especially, don't forget this was 20 years ago. So there was not as much in terms of technology help and what was out there. A lot of lawyers didn't understand what it was or how to use it. So helping them to figure out systems and then technology that could help them systematize their practice so it would run better, so the lawyers could focus on being lawyers and helping their clients, rather than spending so much time on the billing and the administrative work that comes with running a law practice. Another common problem was billing. This is the quintessential fighting with clients about getting paid, whether we could move people away from hourly billing. That was one of the things that I've been trying to do with lawyers for 20 years, is to get them to move away to the extent that they can from billing by the hour, because I think It creates a tension between lawyers and clients. And then really bringing in not just any client off the street, but bringing in the right clients. So I did a lot of work with my clients, the lawyers that I worked with, on how they were acquiring business and what their messages were, and really getting into the nitty gritty of who their target audience was so that they could get the clients who would be the right fit for them, that they could do the work, that the clients would be appreciative of the work that they were doing, then the clients would pay them for the work that they were doing.
That makes sense. When you talk about switching people from doing hourly billing to flat fees, to me, I always remember this lovely acronym, FUD: fear, uncertainty, doubt. That's what billable hours creates in your client's mind. It's the fear. How much is this going to be? Uncertainty. I really have no idea how much it's going to be. Neither do you. And now there's doubt whether I want to hire you or not. So why do that to the client? I'm still bewildered that so many law firms, and I come from an industry, I run a marketing company, where billable hour model still exists, which is shocking to me because I think everyone in this industry understands that FUD is a very real thing. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. It's what you create when you say, yes, I'm going to bill you this many hundreds of dollars per hour, and no, I cannot tell you exactly how many hours it's going to take to reach the objective that you are after, or to settle this case, or to whatever it is that it takes. Hate that, and I still don't understand why so many people just stick to that outdated, terrible, terrible, terrible model. Okay, so two things: productivity, and what I heard there is it gives you the freedom from doing minutia, like the work that you as an attorney are not designed to do, and also like it's probably way below your pay grade if you're doing billing, or a lot of like tasks that if your billable rate is $300 an hour, for example, and you're doing paralegal level work, well, now you're doing like $40 work.
Right.
Like, why did you just discount yourself by 75%? Like, there are people who love doing this work at that rate. It's 75% cheaper than your rate. Like, why do that? So it's that freedom. And you also mentioned it decreases satisfaction. Like, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think most people go into the practice of law because certainly for the intellectual challenge, but also because they want to help people. They want to make a difference in the world or in their community. And I think sometimes getting caught up in worrying about how you're going to pay the bills or how you're running the practice, doing all the minutia of the background work, pulls you away from that. And I've seen countless lawyers that I've worked with who have then also gotten away from their ideal client, the community that they wanted to help, just because they saw a client or somebody came to them that maybe wasn't the best fit for them, but they couldn't get past the money that they would make from that client. Getting lawyers to let go of that fear, that's their FUD, right? Their fear, uncertainty, and doubt. Their fear that another client is not going to come behind them, that, they don't know when the next fee is going to come and they're worried about paying their bills. And so that gets in the way of them doing the work that really fulfills them, and that contributes to the burnout as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a symptom of poor marketing and intake system and billing system, right? If you are worried about where the next client is going to come from, or when's the next bill going to be paid, well, you're going to have a substantial lead flow, and your intake may be broken, and your billing should really be looked at if you do not know. So those are common problems, some more so prevalent in this like solo or very small law firm space, whereas actually the marketing problem is, and I operate a marketing company, usually when clients come to us, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge. But once you have that marketing system that's humming along, as imperfect as all of them are, and I'm the first one to admit it, I've never seen a perfect marketing system unless you have 10 different marketing things working at the same time. That's a perfect marketing. And some law firms actually do, over years, build up 10 different channels for client attraction, and then there's a lot of certainty.
Yeah.
But for most, there's a little bit of uncertainty. But once you have that machine that's humming along, that uncertainty is removed. So definitely that fear is gone. But productivity, it just and productivity leading to satisfaction makes a lot of sense. So do you focus on, like, what's the methodology for figuring out here's what you should be doing and everything else gets delegated, outsourced, or just canceled? Like, how do you go through that? How do you decide what's valuable and what's not valuable? What to let go of?
It's really figuring out what the priorities are of the firm, of that individual lawyer, if I'm working with an individual, or if we're working with a firm or with a group of people in a firm, sometimes just the partners, figuring out what their sweet spot is, what they do best, but then also figuring out what their clients' highest needs are. Because some of these law firms are doing things the way that they've done them for years and years and years, and they're providing services maybe that the clients don't really even want or need. So it's all figuring out what the priorities are, of the firm, of the lawyer, and of the client. And then saying anything that doesn't fit into that, it should be delegable. But also, it may be a priority for you or for the firm, but that doesn't mean that you have to do it. So you were talking about, well, if you're the lawyer whose billable rate is $300 an hour and you're doing paralegal level work at $40 an hour, that doesn't make any sense. So a lot of it is the administrative, it's the back end, it's the repetitive things that we can put a system into place. It's automating a lot of things so that you're not using the brain power to try to remember. You have to follow up with somebody. But you'd be amazed, even now with all the tools that are available, how many lawyers are still not using them. So,
I
and
believe
some of
it.
them, even
Change is hard.
in bigger firms, even in mid-sized firms, I've seen that they're still not implementing what could be implemented. And when I say system, a system doesn't necessarily mean technology. It just means sitting down and creating a system. So I've done that for law firms too. It's just sitting down and creating the workflow and then saying, where in this workflow do you as the partner or even as the associate, as a lawyer, need to be involved? And where can this be pushed down the line and delegated to somebody further along, or delegated to sometimes to technology that can now take over this piece. So you don't have to calculate the statute of limitations. All you have to do is put the formula in and let the software do it.
I get it. I think this is uncommon thinking for most business owners, and I'm including law firm owners into this equation, is that your job is to satisfy three groups of people: your clients, your employees, and your shareholders if you have more than one equity partner. How do you do that as a law firm owner? By focusing only on the things that are going to satisfy A and B and C. And it's not a lot of things, because if you do a lot of things, you're certainly not going to satisfy all three groups. It is impossible. Thus, the target for any business owner operator, law firm owners included, should be to focus on very few things. Like very, very few things that actually move the needle. Think of those things as the priorities, and everything else is noise. And noise is always 98% of everything that needs to be done. 98% and only 2% is what you really need to get done. And everything else, and it takes time to scale up and get to that revenue level where you have all the people that can take care of 98%, so you focus on those 2%. But my partner and I, our goal every year is to work 180 days, half a year. Why? That's when we're most effective. By taking a lot of time off, and yes, I understand there are 104 weekend days. There are roughly 10 holiday days. So that takes care of 114 out of 180. But the remaining 66 is where, for many people, it's challenging to take, because now we're talking about approximately 13 work weeks to take off, that you really need to take off and actually not work. But we find that by taking more time off, we're a lot more effective at satisfying our clients, our employees, and us as equity shareholders. Because when we take the time, we think about the most important things. It's not like you're taking time off and you're playing video games. We don't. We're in there, like I'm in my later 40s and he's about to turn 40. So It's a lot of time where in the back of your mind, you're thinking about like, how do I accomplish this? How do I accomplish that? But by giving yourself the freedom, I love that word, freedom, like what you do, you help your clients achieve that freedom from doing minutia. You no longer think about, I need to send a bill to someone. I need to file a motion. You don't need to, you can get somebody else to do it. So you can think about, how do we grow revenue by 25% in the next 12 months?
Right. But
So
also,
our people, go ahead.
yep, go ahead. I was going to say also what that does by taking that time off is it forces your employees to step up into doing those things that you would have done if you were around. So, I mean, you have to have good employees, but I think the mistake a lot of lawyers make, and I talk about this a lot when I talk about delegation, is you hand it off to somebody once and it doesn't get done perfectly, and then you get frustrated and you just do it yourself and you say, I'm not giving it away and I'm just going to keep doing it myself. That is the wrong, people need time to develop, and you need to go back to them and say why it wasn't done the way you wanted it done. You get to the point where you develop your people so they can step in and they know when they absolutely need you, or else they know how to solve the problem on their own. So by not being there for half of the time, your employees already know that they have to pick up the slack.
Yeah. There's a great book, and I'm going to use a sports analogy here. A basketball coach is not on the court playing the games. The coach is there to coach the team. The great late John Wooden wrote a tiny book called You Haven't Taught Until They Learned. Maybe I paraphrased the title of the book, but it's something like that, somewhere in my bookcase. But meaning that if you hired someone and you taught them how to do something and you don't like how they did it, that just means that you haven't taught them well enough yet. Don't be like, screw this. I'm going to do this myself. That's not the point. The point is to get them to the point where they do it 80% or better, as well as you would, and move the hell on. Teach them something else and teach them something else and teach them something else. And that's how you free your time or scale your team and scale your business. And I love another point, and that is all of us are going to retire one day by design or by default. If you scaled a team and you delegated 80, 90, or 98% of all the tasks, your business is a hell of a lot more valuable than if you're still doing billing and finding motions and running around and answering the phone and all the minutia. I don't want to buy that business. That's not a business. That's buying a horrible job. Like, who wants that?
That's right. Nobody wants to buy a horrible job.
Nobody wants to buy a horrible job. It's that business is not valuable. Its value is nothing. Nobody wants it because you might as well get a job somewhere else and not worry about spending money on buying a business that comes with a horrible job. So super interesting. So this is one part that you help your clients figure out, which is productivity, which I absolutely love. It's not productivity for the sake of productivity. It's productivity for the sake of freedom, which is awesome. The other part is you focus on LinkedIn as a marketing tool for attracting referrals, not necessarily going out there and getting clients through LinkedIn, which for most lawyers is not practical, but actually proactively generating referrals through LinkedIn. Like, how do you do that?
How to generate referrals through LinkedIn, or how to training lawyers on doing it?
Yeah, like either one, because it leads to the same outcome, right? Like how would a lawyer get to the point where they actually get referrals from the things that they do on LinkedIn?
I think it's all about demonstrating that you understand your target audience, that you understand your clients and their problems, and that you have a solution that you can offer them in response to that. And it actually, in the past couple of years, I've seen LinkedIn really evolve to where a fair number of my clients are now actually getting business directly through LinkedIn. It's still
In what
easier to
practice
get the
areas?
referrals because it's more professionals on LinkedIn. So unless you're a business to business lawyer, then you might get business a little easier through LinkedIn.
Mhm.
But even a lot of people who have business to consumer practices, their audience is still professionals. So they might not be on LinkedIn looking for a lawyer. I mean, I don't think anybody's on LinkedIn looking for a lawyer, but they're seeing things in their feed, or you're engaging with them, even more importantly, with what they're posting and what they're commenting on and their activity on LinkedIn. And so you're getting to know people just like you would networking in real life. Sometimes you're going to get business through networking because you meet a good referral source at a networking event or at a charity event. But occasionally you might get a referral, you might get business because you're standing on the soccer field with another parent while you're watching your kids play. So it's just getting to know, and you talk to each other and you get to know, and they know what you do. And then if they hear of something, they send you a referral. So the same things apply on LinkedIn. And it's really a lot about consistency and engaging with other people as opposed to just promoting and just trying to post and promote, which a lot of people were doing in the beginning on LinkedIn. And now they're starting to understand that it's more about having the conversation and engaging with people and not just promoting.
Help me paint a practical picture. Let's suppose that I'm a client of yours and I practice family law. What would I do on LinkedIn in order to attract referrals or direct clients?
So for family law, it's probably going to be more referrals, although professionals get divorced or have custody issues or all the time. So they might see something if they're exposed to what you're posting. But it's about posting informational content. So it might be commenting on something in the news that has to do with family law. It might be posting about issues that you've seen or cases that have come down or how something that's happening currently might affect the family. It could be not even related to law necessarily. So if you're a family lawyer, you could post things about families and things that might affect families without necessarily talking about family law all the time, but you're letting your target audience who, maybe they're interested in things about children or, they're concerned about home ownership. So I have a client now who he's in a space that is related to family lawyers, and he's posting about mortgages because a lot of times in divorces you have, okay, who's taking over the house, who's going to be dealing with the mortgage, what are our options with respect to the mortgage. So you could post, family lawyer could post something of his that would say, hey, this is an issue that comes up for our clients, is what are they going to do with the mortgage, and you might not know that you have these options. So it could be doing the referral sort of the other way by promoting somebody else that would be helpful to their audience.
Yeah, it's such an interesting side point about mortgages. Going back to Great Recession, a lot of people couldn't get divorced because they couldn't afford to get rid of their house that was underwater. For those who are too young to remember, meaning you bought the house for $500,000 and now it's worth $300,000. You can't sell. You have negative equity. To sell it means that you have to pay back the bank a couple $100,000. Today, it's a different story. You have a mortgage rate of 2.75, while the going market rate is 7.5, and I won the house. No, I won the house.
Right.
Just to keep that 2.75% interest rate mortgage. So I don't know the answer to that, but that's definitely a whole kind of interesting dilemma. So I can see how on LinkedIn you can share that, and people are like, yeah, that has been on my mind.
Right.
I've been thinking about divorcing this asshole for the last year, but I just don't understand how this part would play out. It was actually pretty practical. I love it. I'm sure you have a lot of other tricks up the sleeve to teach your clients so that they can obtain more freedom in their life from doing things that they shouldn't be doing and attracting more business through professional networks like LinkedIn. If someone wants to connect with you and spill the guts, tell you about the problems that they're having and be like, Allison, help me figure this out. I do want more freedom. I do want to get more clients. I want to make more money, have less stress, less headaches, work fewer hours because I become more productive and I delegate more stuff. How do they get a hold of you?
So you can email me at, it's Allison, which is ALLISON, at Legal Ease, which is EASE, consulting.com. You can always give me a call at 631-420-221. You can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm easy to find. It's Allison Johs, Johs. Those are probably the easiest ways to connect with me, or you can shoot over to my website and connect with me from there. And my website is Lawyer Meltdown.
Gonna remember that one. I've been to the website. There's a lot of good content there. Allison, thank you so much for sharing the insights. Really appreciate you being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.